Kirby fights against Wispy Woods at the start of his adventure. In fact, I think Wispy Woods tends to be a recurring first boss in the series, so his presence stands as a guardian to the entrance to the adventure. He's a tree that spews air, just like Kirby. In fact, for such a short game, many of the bosses in Kirby's Dreamland are air-based. Besides Wispy, we have Kabula, a balloon filled with air, and Krako, a cloud. Castle Lololo and Mount Dedede are the only areas with slightly more humanoid bosses, and both feature names formed by a triple syllable. What is this fixation with air? On the one hand, the game seems to ascend upward, level by level, so it is ascending up into the sky or into air. From the plains to the slightly more mountainous castle area, up the castle tower to the floating islands, and from the floating islands to the clouds, to finally reach Dedede's castle, a peak so high up that it reaches beyond the stars. The fact that Dedede is a bird, then, is fitting. We are in airborne territory, in a similar way than the Dynablade and Milky Way Wishes games, where the final bosses are also winged creatures, encountered after we have ascended way beyond the earth. Kirby himself is a winged creature, in that he can fly, so his association to elemental air is twofold. Dedede's castle is beyond the stars, and itself represents a star. 5 stars, each of them 5 pointed stars, hold the castle up in the air, and Dedede seems to be the only boss who emits stars instead of bombs, apples, blocks, and so on. It is, of course, the 5th area in the game, and acts as the transcendence of the cross formed by the first 4 areas. After beating him, Kirby ascends up into the sky, himself becoming the supreme winged creature hovering over the world, raining healing nourishment over all. The main plot is that all the food has been stolen by Dedede, and Kirby has to redistribute this wealth across the land. In a sense, the food is also nourishment and energy in general, as if King Dedede had accumulated too much libido, too much psychological energy as external projection. Kirby, then, integrates him, becomes him, and in so doing allows all of that libido to rain back down to the lower, more earthly levels of the collective psyche. Kirby is, after all, an unfinished doodle. He has no image, no form. His body is a placeholder sprite, which was eventually kept since the developers liked it so much. He not only spews air, he is air, because he is empty of content, a skeleton which could adopt any form, as shown in other Kirby games where the ingestion or integration of the enemy transmutes the body. In Kirby's Dreamland, this only happens at a subtle level after beating Dedede, in that Kirby then transforms into him, into a giant bird, at least symbolically. I think it is also funny how a game involving a lack of food begins in a blooming green land full of apples and apple-bearing trees, a Garden of Eden. The food that then rains down from Dedede's castle is mostly junk food, ice creams, sandwiches, snacks, etc. A mountain with a castle on the very tip is, to me, evocative of a volcano. When the castle explodes and flies up into the air, raining food on the land, it reminds me of the lava erupting and covering the land. This, funnily enough, links all this to libido once again. What is lacking in Dreamland isn't food, it's fast food, enjoyment, pleasure food. There's a hero's journey going on, evocative of religious mythos, where Kirby starts at the Garden of Eden and ends in the Garden of Eden, but the process that leads him around this circle is a fall from grace, caused by an evil demiurgic king which has been projected outside of oneself and needs integrating. Wispy Woods drops apples and dangerous spiky objects, somehow equating both items in a way that makes it seem that apples are dangerous, are the fruit of the tree of knowledge which causes that fall from Eden. But to complicate things, Wispy Woods, as are most of the bosses, is similar to Kirby himself, a wooden shell filled with the breath of life, kind of like Pinocchio. So Kirby needs to beat each boss and, in so doing, integrate them into his own self. It's as if each boss were a more and more distilled version of the king archetype which sits at the center of Kirby's soul, but which he has not integrated and has thus become a shadow, an external demiurge stealing all the energy from his soul. The king is a bird and lives in the air because he is mental. There is nothing material about him, which may be why he adopts the form of an exaggeratedly material being, a fat, food-loving king. But one who, despite his love of matter, lives up in the clouds, escaping the material world as much as he can.